It's the pitch on location here at the Appanoose County Museum, and we've got some of our chamber members and our ambassadors are here. It's been a special day after COVID. The museum is now open for customers, and today's been a big day with the grand reopening. Sandy's here, and I've got Dave right here. Gary Craver is going to cut the ribbons for the reopening. So Gary, let's count you down and let's get this ribbon cut. We're going to cut it in 3, 2, 1. All right. Yeah, thank you. A lot of good folks here. And
into history. And so I want to get this right. So this actually is from one of his books where he wrote his biography, and I just changed it to from first person to whatever we call that. I don't know, is that third person? I should not be trying to do English. All right. Willis Bill Husenfeld was born in 1924 on a farm in Sioux County in northwest Iowa, 5 miles from the nearest town of Hull, Iowa. He was the descendant of Dutch immigrants, his grandparents coming to South Dakota in 1881. He was part of a family of 4 boys and 2 girls. His mother died when he was only 6. He graduated from Iowa State College in Ames with a degree in electrical engineering after serving 2 years in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Bill first worked for the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation in Casper, Wyoming, where he decided to go by the name of Bill instead of Willis. While in Wyoming, he married Marjorie Krieger, a registered nurse who had grown up in Cody, Wyoming. The couple moved to Ottumwa, where Bill began a 35-year engineering career with Iowa Southern Utilities. The family, including 3 very young daughters, moved to Centerville, Iowa in 1958, where he worked as an electrical distribution engineer and later was director of electric and gas rates. After his retirement in 1990, Bill published a 325-page genealogy entitled Husenfelds in America, which included many pictures and data on all of the members of the Husenfeld family living in the USA. Bill began to get interested in local history with the research on the 1846 Mormon Trail in preparation for the 150th anniversary of the trail. The committee published Mormon Trails Across Appanoose County in 1995. Bill was elected Appanoose County Chairman of the Sesquicentennial Commission to celebrate Iowa's 150-year anniversary of statehood. In that capacity, he authored and published books This Day in History and Cemeteries of Appanoose County. Bill went on to publish Pioneer Stories, Towns of Appanoose County. And you'll see all of them, all the ones that he had, that he either wrote or compiled up here on the wall. Let's see, I'll start that over. Bill went on to publish Pioneer Stories, Towns of Appanoose County, Historic Homes of Centerville, Civil War History of Iowa Companies, the History of Coal Mining in Appanoose County, A History of Appanoose County, and My Last Hurrah. He also wrote the historical portion of the book Appanoose County 1904 to 2004, which was published to celebrate the courthouse centennial. He also wrote a weekly column in the Centerville Daily Iowegian on the subject of Appanoose County history since July of 2002. Bill and his wife Marge were avid bird watchers for many years. He was chairman of the Centerville Concert Association for some years as well. He sang bass with the barbershop Coal Miner Chordsmen. For many years, he was active in postal chess, where the players mailed their game boards back and forth to each other. And we have some examples of that, and auto bridge, which I didn't look that up to find out exactly how you play that. Bill was a longtime member here of the board of the Appanoose County Historical Society, and it was he who started the annual newsletter and the highly successful, and I gave him credit for this every time, the Patrons of Our Heritage sponsorship program, which I think is one of the main reasons we're able to stay in existence, because people like to give where they know they need to, and so we send out letters every year, and we, probably half of our income comes from that program, and we are so grateful that he came up with that, because our memberships are like $15 and $27 for a couple, and it's just not enough to keep the lights on, And so we're so grateful to him for that. And the other big thing that we're grateful for is that I'm not sure if it was in his will or it was just a legal document that he had provided for us the copyright to all of these books so that we can publish them over and over and over, and they still sell just as the sales never really goes down on those books because new people get interested and different people want to know different things. But I didn't know Bill his whole life, but I sure enjoyed visiting with him and working with him here at the museum. And so I'd like to formally dedicate this new exhibit to the family who's here. We're so excited that they were able to come. Bill Husenfeld. So thank you. So when you can get up close and sit there and read everything and look at all the different bits of his life. We tried to get a little bit of everything. All I missed was a coal miner cordsman. And I have a picture, but I can't find it. But it will go right there. So thank you very much. The next thing we have is, what's at noon? Do the dedication of the Coal Mining Museum.
Looks like we're about down to board members at our group today, which
They're harder to lie to.
yeah, be truth seekers. When you go downstairs and have an opportunity to see and experience the coal mining part of our museum, it just kind of brings a lump to your throat. It can give you a sense for a lot of things, but one of them would be how hard life really was for many people who coal miners and lived with coal miners and had that lifestyle. It was through the efforts and dedication of Leon Kozarich and really his inspiration that we have the coal mining part of our museum. I know everybody here has been downstairs and has seen it. If you haven't, you really need to do that and kind of experience that before you leave. Leon really planned and constructed and built most of this part of our museum. His two of his kids, David and Molly, are here today, and as we go along here, we'll turn it over to them to see what they may think about what their dad did and have some thoughts on what we have downstairs. Leon was born in the coal mining settlement of Diamond near Mystic in 1925. Leon himself was not a coal miner, but had many family members that were. He told me many stories of the life and hardships of mining coal. He graduated from Centerville High School in 1944, and shortly after that joined the war effort and served in the Signal Corps in World War II in Saipan. In 1951, he married Barbara Ellen Ducey, and to their marriage was born David and Molly and Lori. He farmed in the area for over 65 years, was a member of the Mystic Christian Church for 60 years, and he served 50 years on the District Soil Conservation Commission for Appanoose County. He was a long-time member of the Appanoose County Fair Board, the Centerville School Board, and the FHA Board. Those of you that knew Leon just know that he was an extremely decent guy and just interested in people and a very nice man. He had a passion for Appanoose County history and in particular coal mining history. He was a craftsman and a woodworker, and as I mentioned, he planned envisioned and constructed really much of what we have downstairs in our coal mining area of this museum. Leon died in 2014 at age 88 years. As a part of the board for our museum, it's our great honor and pleasure to dedicate this portion of the Appanoose County Historical Museum to our friend and fellow former board member, Leon Kozarich. As I mentioned, David and Molly are here. David, you have some comments you'd like to make?
Well, even if you didn't come from right here, but had people that were from this area, you were always touched by coal. That was the main heat that there was. Strangely enough, the year of the largest output was 1917, and it declined thereafter. But he always looked at it as the fact that, okay, most of your small communities like this, they've got these type of museums. You have a school room, a little grocery store, or whatever. But we had a chance for something quite different. You have the same, somewhat like the same up at Lucas, because that was also a mining area. But this was kind of a one-of-a-kind sort of place. And you get people even today, especially since they moved away from it, that have very little understanding of this, what it was like, how terribly labor intense it was. If you could spend all your day laying on your side to work with a pick, shovel, whatever, you might have some idea what it could have been like. And I can't. In fact, Dad never did mine any coal, but he was in a mine 2 or 3 times. His dad owned a small mine and worked for probably 45 years in them. And another granddad worked probably dang near 40 years in the mines. But that was the way of life. And then people, especially at that age, that got out and saw the world, they realized, hey, there's something besides coal mining out there. and many of them, that's why you get people around from here, why there were scads of them ended up living up in the Quad Cities working for John Deere and Farmall and that, because, and then they knew at the end of the war, coal mining was on its way out, you know, as a need for diesel engines were coming in, and the coal, a lot of those went for train engines. Well, that was starting to disappear or dissipate, whichever you want to call it. And you had to do something else. Well, that's how a lot of people end up. There's hardly anybody around here that doesn't have some relative up around the Quad Cities. Well, that's how that came about. And clear up to the last mine that worked in 1971, and even if probably a lot of you have seen the film, you can kind of get an idea how labor intense that was. And way back, there was no insurance, no nothing. If someone got caught in a collapse, shall we say, they just brought them home to die, and that was it. You know, there wasn't any types of insurance or, you know, what's the word I want?
Workman's
Yeah, workman's comp. Yeah, there we go. See, I still got a little bit of the leftover chemo stuff that keeps me throttled down, and so it was tough. I can remember Grandpa coming home literally black from one end to the other, and they had, and if you've seen it down here, those round, they call it dinner buckets from the time. There was water in the bottom and 2 different stacks which you carried, and I would meet him a lot of times when he was coming in, and you know, some strange reason, there was a lot of times there was an egg sandwich still left. So I would get that. But yeah, I think his last year was about 1961 or 2. I think he said he closed up 3 different mines, and after the 3rd one, he said, I'm not going to try anymore. So then he was home for good at age of about 62, you know. But yeah, it was tough. Pit closed, had patches on patches on patches in many cases. And like I said, they came home nearly black at night, a lot of them. But in the summertime, that's when you really didn't mine, but that's where a lot of the miners that didn't have farming like my granddad did, they'd raise great big gardens because otherwise they couldn't afford their 8 kids that they probably had. So it worked in all different directions, you know. And it was just a tough sort of life that, thank goodness we've moved away from it, you know. So that's all I'll give for the time being. I don't need to get long-winded.
One thing I wanted to touch on, everybody talks about how hard a life coal mining was, but it was also a very hard life for their families. You know, the kids started working at home to tend the animals, the chickens or whatever.
Or some kids started working in the mine behind their
Yeah,
father at
yes.
age 8 or 10.
But also those wives, the pit clothes that you're talking about, the big tubs that they'd have to boil water in and wash those clothes outside and, you know, try to get some of the dirt out of them. They had tough lives too. But you think about it, those people that came to mine in this country came for a better life. And this was a better life for them because they gave their children opportunities.
And another thing that worked out well is a lot of these were not just Croatians, but English, Irish. They had people that mined back in England and such, so they snapped them up pretty fast around here.
Yep. And the one other thing I'd like to mention about my dad was he liked to study. He liked to talk to people that had coal mined. I don't know if there's still that tape around where he got retired miners
I think
together.
it's around, yes.
You know, and they just talked about what the life was like. And that was great. Any chance he had to do that, he would. One of the most cherished things he liked toward the end of his life when he was not very mobile was when someone would call him and ask about a certain mine or a certain person or do you know this family? And he just absolutely loved to talk to people.
You'd have them on the phone an hour.
Yeah, and fill them in on their family, where they lived, what their house was like, who they dated in high school even, you know. He just knew everything about it and absolutely, you know, loved to talk to people about it. And the coal mining part that he has made up, the mock mine down there, you know, he'd been around it, he'd been in a mine, so he kind of knew what it looked like. And he would think about things like that for a while and kind of draw up a plan for it. And some of the towns that he did the scale models of, you know, he'd get maps out and draw. And he had me figuring, we were talking about algebra and things that you ever use after school. I had to figure the exact curve of the hill on Diamond from the elevation here to the elevation at the creek and how wide it was. But he wanted it to be realistic and, you know,
I
true to
thought I
scale.
did that.
No, he didn't trust you. He sent it to me. Well, I guess
Well, I was
he
out there
double
for
checked us.
2 hours with a hand level measuring off that hill.
Yeah. Oh. Well, he just gave me number. Well, you got the
Yeah,
elevation.
I did
and
the
got-
hard work.
Yeah, you did. You did the legwork. But he just
Literally.
wanted it to be, you know, to scale and be precise about it. And, you know, I'm so glad that the Historical Society gave him that outlet to, you know, put in place something that he really was passionate about.
He started gathering up little bits and pieces of tools and that long before we got started here.
Yes.
So he had some things to
Yes.
go from early on.
And I can't tell you how many pictures I have of that mine pony in progress. From,
Yes, he carved the mine
yes,
pony, if
from-
anybody didn't
from,
know that.
you
Well,
know,
he tried to find one and
getting
never could.
the box and you know, gluing all the wood together and getting it big enough shape and then starting to carve it out and, you know, and
I'd
all
like
of
to
the
see
details.
those pictures. Bring us those pictures
Okay,
sometime. We'll
I'll
talk
find
to
some
you.
of them. Yeah,
That'd be great.
yeah. But, you know, thank you guys so much for the dedication to him and because I know he'd be proud of it and he was very proud of the work down here. And,
No, he wouldn't want the dedication.
no, he would want the dedication. He wouldn't want the accolades.
Oh, okay.
So if
It just-
anybody wants to see
yeah.
the plaque,
Yes.
it's downstairs
Oh,
on the door frame. So
Yeah, and another one of his favorite things was to come over to the museum on his weekend to work, or if there was something going on in town, and just sit down there because he didn't do stairs well, and just visit with everybody that came through. And
Yeah.
you'd be surprised how many people would come in. And well, was your granddad so and so, or did your mom go to school over in Jerome or wherever?
Yeah.
And he knew so many people, and it just flabbergasted a lot of them when you know he knew some of their family. So it
That's
made it a little more personal for them too. Mhm. But thank you for the dedication.
We're only scratching the surface,
Yeah.
but that's all we can do right now.
Thank you, guys.
I'd like to say something,
Don't fall down the
please.
steps.
What's that?
I'd like to say something.
Sure, go ahead.
I'd like to share a little something, please. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Leon Kozlowitz, and I'd like Nancy to say something also. I met this gentleman, my first visit to the exhibition. I shared this with Dan, and I walked down there to introduce myself to him, and I told him who I was and who my parents were, and he said, "Young man, I knew who you was as soon as you walked down these stairs." I said, "Sir, you must have me confused with somebody. This is the first time I've been back here in about 40 years. He said, "Well, I'm gonna tell you, you look just like your grandfather." So, speaking of what you were speaking of, my mother, Leon, and my uncle went to school at Diamond Mine. And then they moved that school up the road a little bit, and the gentleman...
They just
used-
tore it down 2 or 3 years
Right,
ago.
they
It
used
finally
it
fell
as
in.
as a storage area
Yeah.
for hay or whatever. And my father and mother are buried out to Philadelphia Cemetery. Well, anyway, every year we came back, especially Nancy, had to go see Leon, have to go see Leon, right, you know? And he shared stories about growing up and going to school with my mother and my uncle and his wife, I think her name was Betty. Barbara, right. Rode on the handlebars of my uncle's
Yes.
bike into Mystic. That's how they rolled back in
Right,
those days,
yeah.
right? You know? And I consider it such an honor and a pleasure to have known Leon. And I always remembered that Tennessee Ernie Ford song, 16 Ton, you know, and I owe my soul to the company store because a lot of the things that they were able to purchase, that went on credit, and then the money that they were making or whatever, they got paid in script or something like that, so that the miner, he was pretty much indebted or locked into that particular mine. And I spent time in the military, and I spent time down in manholes digging sewer and pipelines. I worked out here at Morris Foundry. I paid some dues, but I've always been in awe of those miners. What they put up with and what they went through, like I have.
And many succumbed to black lung.
Yes.
Yes.
And I have plaques down there for an uncle and my 2 grandfathers. And yes, I used to speak to him and Rudy Blazevich about their experiences in the mine. And he said, "Well, Bob, you know, we didn't have any room for prejudice because when we walked out of there, we were all black anyway." You know? So I just wanted to share that with you people. I mean, Leon he's been an inspiration and a touchstone for me ever since I came back to this area. Thank you, folks.
There was also the case of the black miner. You've heard this story. His name was Arthur Miner.
All right.
And he was always around the area and spoke fluent Croatian. So there were some of these guys that started to make fun of him, you know, "Hey, is that your brother over there?" Arthur Miner answered him back, you know, in Croatian.
Yeah. Yeah. They would not put up with prejudice among
Yeah.
anybody. Yeah.
Thank
I'm
you.
really glad to meet you, because
I talked to one of you on the phone
Yeah, I think you talked
for a
about
while.
that.
Yeah.
Well, then you don't want to meet our other sister.
I'm a nice one. She tells me I'm much older than her, but I'm also the nicer one.
I would like to add,
love your dad. He made me feel
Yes.
at home here, but because I was totally out of the picture here. I mean, I was never in the Midwest at all. And he really pulled us in. But he got me when he said to Robert, "You look just like your grandfather." I almost fell over and we just got goosebumps. It was amazing.
But Dad was good at knowing family members and telling you about them.
But I was
Yeah.
a nobody from nowhere, so
Right.
I just when I'd come out, I got wintergreen candies for him.
Yes.
And then I started making cookies and pies that I'd take over to him. I am a nurse, and I knew that he had diabetes,
You like
but I
peppermints,
figured,
too.
Yeah.
I figured,
You know, we figured at
Things are-
his age, what's a piece
why
of pie?
not?
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He always
I would
told us
like
when he
to
visited.
add something to this whole ceremony. I'm so grateful to Bob and Nancy for making the trip all the way from California to be here today. You have added so much to these last two dedications that we appreciate it so much. Thank you.
It's our honor.
All right.
Well, thank you all for coming here today. I'm very honored that I get to do the dedication for our research room. Several years ago, well, at least it seems like several years ago now, we underwent some major renovations here in the museum, and our research room was part of that. When we got our new table, new chairs, all these new shelves, and just kind of refreshed the whole room. And part of the donations that went towards that included some great donations from Gary, but they go beyond that because Gary's connection to the Historical Society and his contributions to the Historical Society are deep-rooted in research, which is something that's he's very passionate about. He spent countless hours, I believe that's the wording we have on the plaque, countless hours researching and compiling articles and stories for both genealogical and historical about buildings or maybe some pioneer families, and he spent countless hours compiling all of that information. Gary tells me often that he got his start before the digital age, so he went through microfilm, sat there going at the library, scrolling through microfilm, making some copies, sending letters to people, like writing letters and mailing them to people instead of just emails. And once the digital age came about, then it was like a whole new world opened up for research.
He didn't do telegraph.
Not quite.
He traveled though, he went all the way to Italy.
And then once we got the newspaper database and the digitized newspapers, a bunch more avenues opened up and a lot more research was able to be done. Most recently, Gary's gone through the process of going through over 100 years worth of death certificates of Appanoose County and updating records for Oakland Cemetery and connecting people via internet site Find a Grave. So he's done a lot of work recently. Most notably, he's compiled a lot of information on the entire history of the sheriff and police officers department and the Civil War veterans and the African American community too of Centerville. He's done a lot of work on all of that. So we at the Appanoose County Historical Society Board are very honored that we will be able to dedicate and now call this the Gary Craver Research Room. Thank you, Gary, for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Speech.
Do you want to say anything, Gary?
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, that's my passion, research. So a lot of interesting people have lived in Appanoose County in the past. So I enjoy doing it.
And still do it.
I still do. Yeah. Yeah.